Sunshine in the south, that'll feel quite pleasant with temperatures up to 21 Celsius, mostly 16 to 18 elsewhere. Saturday starts a bit chilly, but mostly starts fine and bright, and many central and eastern parts will stay that way. However, out west, cloud and rain will start to move into Northern Ireland, parts of north and west Wales, and then into northwest England and southwest Scotland. As well as turning wet here, it will once more turn very gusty. Again, temperatures for most in the mid to high teens, but 20 Celsius in the sunny.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. So, are the establishment media running scared of GB News by calling for our channel to be shut down? And will they succeed? I'll be dealing with that in my big opinion next. Then my superstar panel weigh in. Tonight, Alison Pearson, Lord Bailey and Amy Nicole Turner. After her bold speech in Washington, D.C. provokes a backlash from woke commentators, are Suella Braverman's critics wrong that she is a political extremist? David Campbell Bannerman and Narinder Kaur go head-to-head in a lively clash. Is King Charles's slimmed-down monarchy a race to the bottom? Plus, after they clock up yet more air miles in a 14-day travel spree, are Harry and Meghan the world's biggest eco-hypocrites? Well, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier deliver their unfiltered analysis shortly. Elsewhere, as number 10 floats the idea of taking us out of the ECHR, should Rishi Sunak just be done with it to finally stop the boats? I'll get the views of fearless former government minister Anne Widdecombe. Plus, after the EU fines Britain £28 million, Anne will tell Brussels where they can put that money. We'll also bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, and Fleet Street icon Kelvin MacKenzie reacts to the BBC's new impartiality rules as they bow down to Saint Gary Lineker. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. I'll see you after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you and good evening to you. Well, 3 people are confirmed to have died following a double shooting in the Dutch port city of Rotterdam. A 39-year-old woman and her 14-year-old daughter were killed in the first shooting. A 46-year-old male lecturer was shot dead in the second incident, which took place at a university. Police confirmed a 32-year-old man was arrested at the scene shortly after the building went into lockdown and staff were instructed to leave. Dutch police say the suspect was a student at the university, where crews were also battling fires straight after the shooting.
This afternoon, we had 2 shooting incidents, one of them in a house where 2 people were injured. The shooter then continued to a classroom at Erasmus University. He also shot someone there. We don't know who that victim was in the classroom, but what we do know is that the person we arrested is a 32-year-old man from Rotterdam.
Now, news here at home. The family of a 15-year-old girl stabbed on her way to school has visited the scene where she died as crowds joined a vigil nearby. Eliane Andam was attacked as she was on her way to school in Croydon. A 17-year-old boy who police say knew the victim remains in custody after being arrested yesterday morning. A statement has been read out by a church leader on behalf of the family at the edge of the crime scene.
As a family are struggling to comprehend this painful tragedy that has happened to our beautiful daughter and beloved sister, Eliane. Our hearts are broken and we are overwhelmed by sorrow and grief.
Sir Michael Gambon has been remembered as a magnificent trickster and the loveliest of legends following his death at the age of 82. The Dublin-born star of the stage and screen, who won 4 TV BAFTAs, died peacefully in hospital last night after a bout of pneumonia. He's best known, of course, for playing Hogwarts headmaster Dumbledore in a number of the Harry Potter films, as well as being one of the original members of the Royal National Theatre alongside Laurence Olivier. His family say he was a beloved husband and father. A 16-year-old boy has been arrested after one of the most photographed trees in the country was cut down overnight. The tree at Sycamore Gap, next to Hadrian's Wall and close to Northumberland, was made famous in the 1991 film Robin Hood. The National Trust has said it's shocked and saddened to see the iconic tree cut down. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app, this is GB News.
It didn't take long for the usual suspects to call for this place to be shut down after the airing of an interview on Tuesday night in which a guest made sexist remarks about a female journalist. Following the swiftest possible action from the channel, including the suspension of 2 of its presenters and an ongoing investigation, plus a fulsome apology to the journalist involved, media commentators, politicians and other public figures have been calling for blood. An ad boycott is not enough for them. Ofcom investigations are not enough for them. Bad headlines and blanket negative coverage are not enough for them. They want us gone. Take a listen to ex-Sky News and now Talk TV and Times radio presenter Adam Bolton speaking on the BBC's Newsnight programme yesterday evening.
I have to say, I think the complaints have piled up against GB News. I think there is a delicate and important broadcast ecology in this country. I think, you know, GB News is trying to bust that ecology, and frankly, what Ofcom should do is shut it down.
For a rival broadcaster like Adam Bolton to call for the closure of this channel is about as surprising as the news of Elton John's hair loss. And he's not just a rival, he's a classic member of the London liberal elite, the people who detest GB News so much. And in that clip that you just heard, he says the quiet part out loud. So just think about these words. He said, I think there's a delicate and important broadcast ecology in this country. I think GB News is trying to bust that ecology. Too right we are, because our terrible crime is that we want to give you an alternative. By the way, all three guests on Newsnight yesterday called for GB News to be closed down. I do hope the Newsnight programme is not guilty of breaching Ofcom rules on impartiality or diverse opinion. That would be most unfortunate. In the end, trusting someone like Adam Bolton to protect media plurality is like getting Count Dracula to protect the nation's blood supplies. He and many others wish to keep establishment media just the way it is, in a woke, progressive bubble. And he doesn't want any new media outlets to threaten his job or that of his mates at the Beeb, Channel 4 or ITV. He doesn't want a threat to their dwindling television and radio audiences. And he doesn't want a threat to the prescribed political narrative. Spare me the pearl-clutching from the likes of Bolton. He, like so many of this channel's perma-critics, have a political and professional agenda to see the back of this place. In the end, it's business. GB News is rapidly growing a strong and loyal audience, and it threatens these established stars and the business model of their newspapers, radio stations and TV channels. But in my view, there's another darker reason why this scandal has been leveraged by those who wish us ill. They hate you, the general public, with your inconvenient beliefs and values, ones that don't align with theirs, values that don't go down well at cafes in Islington. They don't want the great unwashed to air their filthy views on net zero, Brexit, British history, immigration, race relations or any other issue. Now, apparently Radio 2 have also been banging on about us today. Every paper you can find is talking about us. TV networks, hundreds of hours. The coverage has been blanket. They're running scared, aren't they? As I said last night, free speech comes with responsibility. As a television network that chose to be Ofcom regulated from the very start, then, of course, Ofcom have every right to investigate what happened on Tuesday. In terms of adhering to broadcasting rules, accountability is critically important. But calls by authoritarian journalists for this place to be shut down is an effort to silence you, our thousands of viewers and listeners. Millions, if you include digital. Did anyone call for the BBC to be shut down after abusers like Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris stalked the corridors of TV Centre? What about Channel 4 or The Guardian or The New Statesman? Should they be shut down for platforming an openly misogynistic Russell Brand who called bedding women an obstacle course? Of course not. Don't be fooled by the crocodile tears. Spare me the faux outrage and the pearl clutching from the usual suspect bad actors, weaponising this story to get rid of this place and to shrink the national conversation to their own ends. The liberal elites, who have the real power in this country, are enjoying this story far more than they're willing to admit. They want to cancel GB News. Well, you can cancel them with your remote control. Now, let's get reaction from my top panel tonight. Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Sean Bailey, your reaction to how the industry is responding to this story?
Look, I'm disappointed. I was very disappointed in Adam Bolton. The idea that a mistake that was made like that would close a channel down is bizarre to me, because if that's the case, the BBC would have been closed down 100 times over. Channel 4, I mean, they'd all be in jail. You know, you can't make those claims over something like that. But what it really says, it says who they are and what their agenda is. And when he talked about the delicate ecosystem, what he's talking about is their huge income. And the fact that GB News is growing at such a rate, at some point, advertisers are going to start saying to advertising agencies, why are you not putting our products in front of the most people? You know, if you're a member of the public who watches this, here's the test. Ask people who don't watch GB News how much they love the BBC, and they'll give you one answer. Ask people who do watch GB News how much they love GB News, and they'll give you a very, Very big answer. What I've found is not only is GB News have a lot of listeners, they are very, very loyal. I have a friend who's a die-hard lefty who watches GB News because she said, I get some argument. She said, I learn what I've always been arguing against. I have another friend who quite frankly, he'd move in if you let him. But the point here is he believes and understands and hears some of his views echoed in GB News.
Do you know what?
He doesn't anywhere else.
I think that's a big part of the problem. It's people having opinions, very, very strong opinions about GB News that haven't actually watched much GB News. So cherry-picked clips all put together can shine quite an inaccurate light on what we actually do here in full. We have people from Novara. We have
who are pretty much a left-wing media outlet.
Completely on with Jacob Rees-Mogg. Where else would you get that? I think we show a lot of different sides, but that isn't always reflected, and that's what leads to these massive, damning opinions that people have of the channel as a whole.
Indeed. I wonder, though, some would say establishment media does a very good job. The Beeb, ITV, Channel 4, they've got millions of viewers and listeners, and therefore they've got no case to answer. What do you think?
I think that we will welcome anything that Ofcom has to say because we have nothing to hide and we welcome the regulation. That's why we've signed up to be part of Ofcom.
Ofcom is not to be feared. If Ofcom treats everybody else... If it treats GB News in the way it treats every other outlet, then GB News is fine. Like I've said before, all of those outlets have transgressed in far bigger ways and nobody's called for their shutdown. What you're seeing here is people's political and social agenda to stop opinions that they can't quite get on board with, feel comfortable about. You've got to let the British public speak, all of the British public, and GB News is an important part of spreading light on some of the opinions which I'd argue are held by the most of the public but are not brought into the mainstream.
Alison, Ofcom has looked at a few moments on GB News since it came on air. You know, we've had our collar felt, there have been investigations, so perhaps Adam Bolton is right to point this out.
First of all, Mark, I'd like to say we've had hundreds of messages from listeners and viewers really saying they're definitely tuning in at 9 tonight because they love the show and they love the channel. So we thank you to everyone for that.
That's amazing.
We're all really heartened by that, and that's why we're here, because we're speaking to an incredibly loyal audience who look at the mainstream media. They look at Sky News, where Adam Bolton presided for many, many years, and they see an increasingly woke green agenda that they don't relate to. And what we're seeing, I think we've seen Today programmes, Nick Robinson on Radio 4 saying that GB News polluting the public debate. Amy, Sean and me, you, are we polluting? We are speaking honestly, and we're expressing diverse views, but we're also expressing views on subjects that millions of people in this country hold dear. And I think this is an outrageous attempt to hysterically inflate a regrettable incident, but an incident which doesn't even compare. Who can remember Joe Brand on Radio 4 saying, why throw a milkshake at Nigel Farage when battery acid is available? Exactly. If anyone here said that tonight, there would be police outside the door. So there is a total double standard. People on GB News, we're treading on eggshells, but there are people, as you obviously commented on the Russell Brand, we've got people, the Christian Gurumurti on Channel 4 News using a foul word.
The C-word about a politician.
About a politician. Again, if you did that, it would be dreadful. GB News using obscene language. So there's this appalling double standard, and it's because there's a homogenous view amongst the other channels on immigration, on net zero, on all manners of things. And most people in this country don't agree with those views. Let's look at the falling circulations and listenerships. Radio 4 Today programme lost 1 million listeners last year. Why did they lose that? Because people are fed up of smug metropolitan views.
However, just to counterbalance that, I mean, I go back to the many millions of people that do watch and listen to the Beeb and ITV and all the rest of it. If GB News gets itself in hot water, which has happened over the last 2 years, Amy, are these people not entitled to draw attention to that? Are they not entitled to raise concerns?
Of course. And they're welcome to. And everybody, that's why we have a regulator.
Yeah.
But what about Bolton? Is he not right to sort of flag up what he thinks is a lapse in standards?
It's his opinion. I think probably what happened earlier this week is warranted to have an opinion like that. But I maintain that that incident doesn't represent our channel.
But also...
And also, he went too far. If you're some kind of news reader, if you're a commentator, of course you can have an opinion on stuff like this. It's what drives viewership. But for him to suggest that GB News should go, he needs to look back into his past. And by his past, I mean the past of Sky, the past of BBC. We fund the BBC to the tune of £3 billion a year, and all we ask for is impartiality. They're not always impartial, so why shouldn't they go? And I go back to the point, if you treat GB News the same as you treat all the other outlets, we're completely safe.
And Alison, briefly, I mean, these commentators are illiberal. It's extraordinary that they call themselves journalists because they want a journalistic outfit closed down. I say the more the merrier.
Yeah.
It's very... Actually, Mark, we're talking nicely about it. It's quite sinister. This isn't the former Soviet Union. You don't just go in and close down an outlet...
For wrong speak.
For wrong speak.
And wrong think.
For wrong think and wrong speak, yeah. We're still here. We're not going anywhere.
Listen, by the way, I think you got a piece in the Telegraph about this. Is it up now on the website?
Yes, it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
Excellent piece.
Yeah.
There you go. Do check out what the brilliant Alison Pearson has had to say in the Telegraph. It will be in the paper tomorrow, but online right now. Still to come, is King Charles's slimmed-down monarchy a race to the bottom? Royal experts Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier give their views shortly. But first, after her bold speech in Washington, D.C. provokes a backlash from woke commentators, are Suella Braverman's critics wrong that she's a political extremist? David Campbell Bannerman and Narinder Kaur debate that in The Clash.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio, and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, the emails are coming in thick and fast. Mark@gbnews.com. Do get them in. They come straight to my laptop. And Colin says, hi, Mark. Funny how it's the mainstream media who are calling for GB News to be shut down and not the public. Did Channel 4 call for the Beeb to be closed down after all their scandals and vice versa? They're all scared of GB News. Keep doing what you're doing. Most of the nation is behind you. Colin, thank you for that. If you're enjoying the show and if you're enjoying the channel, tell your friends, tell your family, and let's change the world together. It's time now. Let me tell you, first of all, by the way, important to trail ahead. Our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, are with us in just a couple of minutes. Are Harry and Meghan the world's biggest eco-hypocrites? You won't believe this story, but first, the clash. Suella Braverman's landmark speech in Washington, D.C. this week has ruffled plenty of feathers after she declared that multiculturalism has failed in Europe and threatens security across the continent. One of her fiercest critics has been The Guardian columnist Owen Jones, who published a scathing article earlier today branding Braverman's speech as extreme right-wing politics. I'm curious to know if Owen had a similarly scathing reaction to Liberal darling and former Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, who way back in 2010 told members of her party that a multicultural approach in Germany had utterly failed. More dog whistle politics, perhaps. So what do you think? Are Suella Braverman's critics wrong that she's a political extremist? Let me know via the email mark@gbnews.com. We've got a poll up as well, the results shortly. But to debate this now, I'm delighted to welcome social commentator Narinder Kaur and former MEP David Campbell Bannerman. Narinder, let's start with you. Do you think that Suella Braverman is a political extremist?
I think Suella Braverman is one of the nastiest, racist, homophobic, upper-class, poisonous Home Secretaries this country has ever seen. She is nasty, and if that was anyone else, she would have been sacked. If that was a white MP saying what she says, the fascist language she uses, they would be sacked. She's the brown face used to push racist rhetoric. She does appeal to the extreme right wing. That's a fact.
Narinder, what you've just done there is indulge in a litany of racist remarks yourself, focusing on Suella Braverman's skin colour. The bottom line is that she has spoken out about unsustainable levels of migration into this country and across the Western world. She speaks for millions.
No, she doesn't speak for millions. It's a lie, actually, because we've taken far more legal migrants than we do illegal. We have signatories to the UN Convention. We've got legal obligations. And actually, the backlog is just it's smoke screen. They can deal with the backlog. They refuse to deal with backlog.
And Narinder, the ultra-woke Prime Minister of France, French President Emmanuel Macron, in a TV interview this week, said we cannot accept the misery of the world. So is he a far-right extremist too?
No, because he's saying France can't take the world because all we hear from, why should they? We are also signatories to the UN Convention, Mark. We are signatories. We have legal obligations to the world. The UN Convention themselves have rebuked what Suella has said. They have said, we do not need any kind of reform. Britain has a backlog. It's embarrassing that Suella Braverman went to America and embarrassed this country.
OK, David Campbell Bannerman, is Suella Braverman a political extremist?
Absolutely not. No, I thought it was a very brave and balanced speech. I have to say, attacks on her, that sounds like extreme. What Narinder has just been saying, they sound incredibly extreme. And, you know, it's a very reasonable point. Let's get out the refugee convention in 1951. It's very old. It's out of date. EasyJet, free, Ryanair, all of that. And on multiculturalism as well, she was right. I believe in uniculturalism, one culture that embraces all of our differences, and, you know, we are one entity, and that is a much healthier approach rather than have lots of ghettos, which seems to be arising as they have done in America and all around the world. So I think it was an excellent speech. And I think it's appalling to be attacked as an extremist in such an extreme way, to be honest.
It strikes me, David, that many of the attacks on Suella Braverman are in themselves racist. She gets described as not a proper person of colour, or even, horror of horrors, a coconut, David.
Well, I think that is deeply insulting, and it is racist. And, you know, some of these people think they can't be racist if they're attacking white people or whatever. Well, I'm sorry, you've got another thing coming. That is racism. It's deeply unacceptable. And, you know, we've got to actually discuss these enormous issues very calmly and rationally, and not go over the top when someone comes up with sort of a reasonable interpretation. You can debate that, certainly. But the problem we've got is a knot, as I call it, of human rights laws, ECHR, this Refugee Convention, the Human Rights Act that Tony Blair brought in, the Fundamental Charter of Human Rights, the EU has added, you know, right to a job, that sort of thing. You know, that's the problem. We have this knot, and we've got to address it and untangle that knot.
Indeed. What about all the conflict we saw a year ago in Leicester, which rather contradicts the idea that multiculturalism is working beautifully, Narinder, with ethnic groups at war?
Oh, come on, Mark. That's one incident that every single community can have. You're picking on one thing, and that's deeply unfair. I'm from Leicester. I've lived in Leicester. We have the Hindu community, the Muslim community, the Sikh community, and the Christian community. We all get on. And David, actually, should I tell you what the problem is in this country? You've got 2 million people unemployed, can't work, won't work. And guess who does them jobs? The immigrants come and do those jobs, because God knows we need the immigrants. And you were sat there saying that what she said was brave. It wasn't brave what she said. It was stupid. The woman is stupid and cruel.
David, last word.
Well, I'm sorry, let's have a rational debate. Actually, as soon as you attack people, you've lost the debate. And Narinder, you've lost the debate. Try and debate on facts. And, you know, and actually address
gays and women. She attacked gays and women.
One at a time. David.
I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry. You know, you're attacking people. That's all you do on the left. You just attack people. And you don't actually address the issues, and that's why you keep losing. And you keep losing.
David, you keep saying.
Narinder, you'll have your moment. David, finish your point, and then Narinder, you can come back.
Well, as I say, let's just have a rational, fair debate and not attack each other personally, as Narinder's just done. And, you know, I think it was a brave speech. Look at what she said. And take issue with any of those points she made. You know, let's have a proper debate and not just, you know, jump back into cancel culture and banning everything.
Okay, Narinder, briefly, if you can.
I think your argument is weak. You haven't got a leg to stand on. And the fact is, we British like to help vulnerable people. We are not about cruelty and putting down gays and women. If those people's lives are at risk, we help those people.
OK, we're losing the line to Narinder, thank you very much for joining us. Narinder Kaur and former MEP David Campbell-Bannerman, thank you both. Well, what do you think? Who do you agree with? Are Suella Braverman's critics wrong that she's a political extremist? Robert on Twitter says, to me, she seems to be a realist more than an extremist, although to most people, realism is probably extremism these days. Hen says she's just another lying politician. Chris says, everyone I know is an extremist if that is the case. And your verdict is in. 75% of you agree that Suella Braverman is not a political extremist. 25% say she is. Coming up, should Rishi Sunak be done with it and take Britain out of the ECHR to finally stop the boats? Political firebrand and former government minister Anne Widdecombe weighs in soon. But next up, is King Charles's slimmed-down monarchy a race to the bottom? Plus, I love this story. After they clock up yet more air miles in a 14-day travel spree, are Harry and Meghan the world's biggest eco-hypocrites? Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier are next. And let me tell you, sparks will fly.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Is Suella Braverman a political extremist? The emails are coming in thick and fast. Mark at gbnews.com. Hi, Mark, says Gary. Suella Braverman is absolutely correct regarding multiculturalism and that it's failed the country. Born and bred in Bradford, having worked or lived there for over 60 years, unfortunately, I can tell you there is massive ghettoisation across all of the city. Christine says, too many people misunderstand Braverman's use of multicultural. It has 2 almost opposite connotations. Julie says, Mark, Suella is a breath of fresh air. Thank goodness there's one voice of reason in this government. And last but not least, airing the idea that GB News should be closed down, says Jimbo, is absolutely outrageous. Keep up the good work and face down these totalitarians. I've got to say, I've got a lot of emails coming in support of the channel. You are the most loyal audience we could hope for, and I can only offer you 2 words. Thank you. And Widdicombe on the way, but first it's time for royal experts Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. And after only a handful of the most senior royals made it onto the Buckingham Palace balcony at the Trooping of the Colour earlier this year, King Charles could be preparing to slim down the monarchy even further. That's according to the King's former butler, Grant Harold, who said in an interview this week, Charles has very carefully and dignifiedly slimmed down the monarchy to what he classifies as the core family, and that will only get smaller as, sadly, his royal cousins die off. But Phil, let me start with you if I can. Is the King's slimmed-down monarchy a race to the bottom? After all, the royal family is supposed to be opulent.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening, Mark. I mean, we've got a sort of slimmed-down royal family by default, haven't we? We've got Prince Andrew in disgrace, we've got Harry and Meghan who've decamped to California. So Grant is absolutely right. Once the likes of the Duke of Kent sadly leave us, they are going to be short of people. And I think we've got the monarchy slimmed down to what, it can't be slimmed down anymore. And Princess Anne actually gave an interview about this earlier this year in which she said that from her point of view, she thought it would have slimmed down quite enough. And I think she's right. I mean, the days of the Queen and Prince Philip having 1,500 patronages have gone. We're not going to see that anymore. We've got William and Kate and others just concentrating on a few core issues. Whether that's the right thing or not to do, I'm not so sure. But you really can't slim it down much more because we've now only got 4 people, William and Kate and Edward and Sophie, who are working royals who are under 70.
Too right, and it's asking a lot of the Prince and Princess of Wales, isn't it, Lady C? Do you think the King is guilty of penny pinching?
I think he's guilty of stupidity, if you don't mind my putting it that way, because the fact of the matter is I have been saying for over 20 years now that Charles's idea of slimming down the monarchy is unworkable. Anybody who does any charity work in this country knows that most of the work that the royals, both the senior and the junior members do, is behind the scenes. 98% of it is never reported upon. And Charles seems to be heading in the direction that only what appears in the media should be validated and everything else should be ignored. And I'm sorry, it is unworkable. We are not Denmark and we are not Sweden. I mean, Denmark is half the size, has a population half the size of London and can fit into London with maybe a little bit of leftovers. We're a much bigger country and there is a real need for the royals to continue doing the unpaid charity work and supporting the ordinary people, whether it's the school teachers, the mayors, local government. Most of what they do is never reported upon. And it is a big mistake to think that that doesn't count. That is the backbone of royalty, because that is what makes people in this country feel that the royals are worth having. If it's about photo ops,
I completely agree. I do not want a... Yeah, Lady C, I'm with you on this. I don't want a Tesco value monarchy, but it looks like we're heading that way, or Waitrose Essentials. Now, after flying to Dusseldorf to attend the Invictus Games and then jetting off to Portugal on a top-secret romantic getaway, Harry and Meghan have clocked up a whopping 19,000 air miles over just 14 days. That is despite the eco-conscious couple often lecturing the public about the need to take action to protect the environment. Phil, you couldn't make it up.
No, you couldn't make it up. I have to be honest, though, Mark. In the grand scheme of things, this is not their worst offence, I don't think. I mean, I think these were mainly scheduled flights. They were flights that were going anyway. You couldn't really criticise them going to the World Child event in London. That was a good cause.
Republic, the great unwashed, the proletariat.
Yeah, and the Invictus Games, of course, they were a big success. So I don't think we can criticise them too much. They then went on to Portugal, and makes you wonder whether they spent time, hasn't been confirmed yet, with Princess Eugenie, who's still friends. Makes you wonder whether she's going to be used perhaps as a bit of a sort of Henry Kissinger type figure, a go-between with the royal.
Phil, do you think that this couple are going to turn the corner in terms of their branding? Do you think there are sunny uplands for them? And if so, what story could it be that would move the dial? How do they fix this PR nightmare?
Well, if I were them, if I were advising them, their PR people, I would try and get, first of all, a reconciliation with Meghan's father. I think that would be a great opportunity to be seen with Thomas Markle before that's too late. I gather they are now cooperating with the press a lot more, which they weren't doing before. They said they weren't going to cooperate with the British press, but apparently they were in Dusseldorf. So there's several things they could do, and they were getting a better press the other week. But at the moment, I think they are so unpopular in this country that there's no way back for them really here in the future, if for a long-term future. I certainly don't think Meghan will be particularly welcome, and I don't think she wants to come back here.
Well, they've even got the Americans cheesed off. What do you think about the charge of eco-hypocrisy, Lady C? They would argue that they're going to Germany, they're supporting the Invictus Games. Harry is attending charity events in the UK. They're travelling and they're flying in order to make the world a better place.
Well, of course, that's what they're going to say. And I agree with Phil that at least they had the good grace to fly commercial. But the fact of the matter is, why do they think that they can fly, whether by private plane or commercial, wherever they want and for whatever they want, but that the rabble, the hoi polloi, you and I, should actually not even go away once a year? Why should we take a plane when we can maybe go somewhere 30 miles away? Because that's been their message. And it is a rank hypocrisy, and it's also extremely elitist and snobbish. And I think that, it's not only in Britain that they're unpopular, they're very unpopular in America as well. And people seem to not understand the extent to which they are unpopular, largely because they are virtue signalling hypocrites who are publicity-seeking money grubbers with nothing to recommend them except posing.
OK, well, that's you off their Christmas card list. Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier will catch up next week. Always dropping a few royal truth bombs, but coming up in the media buzz as Brits face an annual bill of £6,000 a year to meet green targets. Are we facing a cost of net zero crisis? But next, as Number 10 floats the idea of taking us out of the ECHR altogether, should Rishi Sunak just be done with it to finally stop the boats? I'll get the views of former government minister, the formidable Anne Widdecombe. Plus, after the EU fines Britain £28 million, Anne will tell Brussels where they can put that money. She's next.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Now, the former Sky News presenter Adam Bolton has called for GB News to be closed down. Not to face an Ofcom investigation, because we are Ofcom compliant and so happy for Ofcom to do their important work. No. He wants to shut us down. I'm disappointed in Adam. He's an old friend of mine. I was regularly on his show and he's let me down. But he's entitled to his view. Do you share it? mark@gbnews.com. We've got lots of emails on this. How about... let's have a look. I must say, Debs. Debs says, "Hi, Mark. I've been a fan of GB News since the start, and I find it disgusting that there are whiny Liberals trying to shut you guys down. Don't let them win, because at least this channel gives you both sides of an argument." Mary and Keith have emailed it. Hello, Mary. Hello, Keith. Good to have you on board. They say, "Hi, Mark. We've always watched GB News since day one, and please keep doing what you're doing. We've always told people about GB News from the start." Thank you, Mary, for that. Jill, "Hi, Mark. Absolutely great programmes with many high-profile and well-respected presenters, the calibre of which is why MSM want to rid you all. Keep going. We watch the channel and love it. Well done to you all." Mick, thank you for that. By the way, if you've got criticism of what we're doing, you can email that too, because I always like to get a bit of a kicking as well. It's all about balance. This show is the home of diverse opinions, so keep it coming, mark@gbnews.com. Now, Niall Gardner and Kelvin Mackenzie are coming up, but it's time now for former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe. And Suella Braverman has been given the green light by Downing Street to float the idea of leaving the European Convention on Human Rights as a warning shot to the Strasbourg court not to block deportation flights to Rwanda. Ministers are confident they can overturn a Court of Appeal ruling in June that concluded the policy did not comply with Britain's obligations under the ECHR, but are fearful Strasbourg will allow legal challenges that could lead to delays to deportation flights. So, Anne, great to have you back on the show. Should the plans be firmed up sooner rather than later? Should we ditch that ECHR?
Well, we certainly should, but it is a complex business. We're tied into ECHR, not just in a single treaty, but in a whole series of treaties which specify complying with ECHR. So it is going to be a complicated process, but I don't want that to be made the excuse. I would like now Rishi Sunak to say right away that it is our intention, not floating ideas, it is our intention, our firm intention, to leave ECHR. He can admit that it will take a while and not to build up expectations like he did over Rwanda, but instead to say that this is nevertheless the direction of travel, this is what we're doing, we've had enough. I mean, that's what he just needs to say to them, we've had enough.
Indeed so. However, do we not risk the opprobrium of the world if we pull out? Britain becomes a rogue state.
Well, there are lots and lots of countries that do not comply with ECHR rulings. We are, as ever, totally wholly on that score. And they're not regarded as a rogue state. They're not lessened in world opinion because they don't actually implement some of the rulings. And I think we just have to say, look, we didn't bring it to this stage. It was brought to this stage through the world not the world, actually, EU, basically, trying to interfere in our internal policies and in our immigration policies. And it's got no right to do that. So I think we just say, sorry, we're leaving. That might galvanise them, actually, then to review some of their judgments and to take a different approach. And that's different. That's different. If the threat is enough, that's fine. But I doubt if it will be, not with that lot.
And of course, notwithstanding that the ECHR's rulings are just advisory, this would be a strong message, wouldn't it? Not just in terms of the UK to the illegal drug and people trafficking gangs, but also a message to the British people that the government are serious about this issue.
Well, yes, it would be a very welcome message. I mean, I'm still waiting for some action somewhere that shows the government is serious. I mean, I did believe it was serious when it suggested Rwanda, but what's it done about it? Absolutely nothing at all. Just hung around waiting on rulings in the middle of the night, and this sort of nonsense. Yes, what I want to see is I want to see action. I don't want to hear words anymore. I don't want to hear Priti Patel floating. Did I say Priti Patel? I meant Suella Braverman floating, leaving the ECHR. I don't want to see that. I want to actually see action. Actions speak louder than words. I'm tired of Rishi's promises. I'm tired of Suella's endless pontificating on what a dreadful state of affairs the immigration system is and doing absolutely nothing about it except putting everybody who comes into expensive hotels and handing the bill to the taxpayer. That's all they're doing.
And what are Suella Braverman's motivations? Is she out there trying to make a difference, or is she auditioning for the Tory leadership?
Well, if she's auditioning for the Tory leadership, I think she will be told to go home. Because if you're going to lead the Tory party, then you need to have a record of action, not a record of fine words. And that's all this is. I'm tired of hearing from them all these condemnations of the things that exist without any action. They got thousands of proposals, but no action.
Well, I agree with you, Anne. We saw that in the Brexit negotiations, and when we were told we can't do that and this treaty can't be reopened. And then Lord Frost steps in, and he was the man of action, and he made a difference. We need a Lord Frost-type figure to grasp the nettle.
Well, before you get too carried away by Lord Frost, I must point out that he is in a large measure responsible for the unholy mess we've got in Northern Ireland. That was the treaty that we negotiated. But the fact is that any government of any country in the world can extricate itself from treaties, providing they go through due process, can extract themselves from treaties. And that is what we've got to do. We've got to extricate ourselves from the ECHR and do it. Not talk about it, not float it. Do it.
And the European Court of Justice has fined the UK £28 million, and that was in the last few days as an EU member. That relates to our period of membership. £28 million. Should we tell them where they can put that money?
Well, I might not phrase it quite like that, but yes, I think that's probably exactly what we should do.
I mean, should we pay the fine, Anne? What do we do you think?
No, we don't pay the fine at all. We say it's a nonsense. This isn't even as if we were breaking the core of the agreement, which was in the nature of the fuels. It was the marking that was wrong. Well, honestly, it's too trivial to even consider. I would just say I would laugh, actually, in the EU's face, just laugh in their face and say, no go. We're not paying. We're just not paying a penny.
But the law's the law, Anne.
The law is the law, but this is a technicality. We've just got to stand up to them. Otherwise, they'll be forevermore trying to get us on the basis of technicalities. We've got to say this wasn't serious and we're not paying. Just say we're not paying.
And you are a best-selling author. You are a television personality. You were an extremely principled government minister and an MP that served your constituents with care and distinction. You're amazing on GB News, and you smashed it on Strictly, as has Angela Rippon. What's your verdict on Angela Rippon's stint on the BBC One dance show?
Well, Angela is more than 10 years older than I was when I did Strictly, and she's a much more accomplished dancer, and she does actually understand movement to music. Now, I didn't understand all of those things. I think this is terrific. And that high kick that Angela did, was an accomplishment. Mine was entertaining, but hers was an accomplishment.
Can she go all the way, Anne, like you doing on the floor there?
I would love to see her win. I would love to see her win, but, the competition will pan out. We'll see who comes for the floor and, what it's like. It's too early to say it.
Was it a happy experience for you, Strictly?
Oh, rather, yes. I mean, come on. It's 3 months in the arms of Anton Dubek.
Well, listen, I'm jealous of Anton. Anne, we'll catch you next week. Thank you so much for joining us. The brilliant Anne Widdecombe coming up. Thanks, Anne. Former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner, previews how Rishi Sunak will fare at next week's Tory party conference. But next, as Brits face an annual bill of £6,000 a year to meet green targets, are we facing a cost of net zero crisis? My superstar panel return to debate that. Plus, I'll be speaking to Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie, responding to the powerful voices that want to close down this place, plus the front pages. But first, here's your weather.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. The green dream that's rinsing you clean. Damning new estimates reveal the march to net zero is costing every household in Britain a staggering £6,000 a year. And that is until 2050, despite Rishi Sunak's bonfire of green policies. £6,000 a year, more on top of everything else. So are we facing a cost of net zero crisis? That's the big debate with tonight's panel. Alison Pearson, Lord Bailey and Amy Nicole-Turner. And with a newfound commitment to common sense policies, including the aforementioned net zero climb down, has Rishi Sunak finally found his inner Margaret Thatcher? Well, the man who knew her best, Maggie's former top aide, Niall Gardner, gives his expert analysis ahead of Rishi Sunak's big week at the Tory party conference. Also tonight, as a new ruling from bosses on Impartiality gives high-profile BBC presenters like Gary Lineker free rein to say what they like on social media, can the Beeb still claim to be politically neutral? Well, Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie answers that in Uncancelled later. And is it time to name and shame MPs who can't define a woman? Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Ed Davey and Emily Thornberry need no introduction. But a new campaign group aims to list all other politicians who struggle with basic biology. Do we have a right to know? Well, my panel weigh in, and news of a woke new male Cinderella when they return shortly. Cinderella with balls. I'll be crowning the final Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of the week, and the first newspaper front pages are minutes away too. Lots to get through, a busy hour, but first, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. Well, we start with news from the Netherlands, and 3 people are confirmed to have lost their lives following a double shooting in the Dutch port city of Rotterdam. A 39-year-old woman and her 14-year-old daughter were killed in the first shooting. Then a 46-year-old male lecturer was shot dead at the second incident, which took place on a university campus. Police have confirmed a 32-year-old man has been arrested on the scene shortly after the building went into lockdown and after staff had been instructed to leave. Dutch police are saying the suspect was a student at the university, where crews were also battling fires immediately after the shooting.
This afternoon, we had 2 shooting incidents, one of them in a house where 2 people were injured. The shooter then continued to a classroom at Erasmus University. He also shot someone there. We don't know who that victim was in the classroom, but what we do know is that the person we arrested is a 32-year-old man from Rotterdam.
Well, in news here at home, the family of a 15-year-old girl stabbed on her way to school has visited the scene where she died as crowds tonight joined a vigil nearby. Eliane Andam was attacked while she was on her way to school in Croydon at 8:30 in the morning yesterday. A 17-year-old boy who police say knew the victim remains in custody after being arrested. A statement has been read out by a church leader on behalf of the family at the edge of the crime scene.
As a family, are struggling to comprehend this painful tragedy that has happened to our beautiful daughter and beloved sister, Eliane. Our hearts are broken and we are overwhelmed by sorrow and grief.
And also today, Sir Michael Gambon has been remembered as a magnificent trickster and the loveliest of legends following his death at the age of 82. The Dublin-born star of the stage and screen, who won 4 TV BAFTAs, died peacefully in hospital last night after a bout of pneumonia. He's best known for playing Hogwarts headmaster Dumbledore in a number of the Harry Potter films, as well as being one of the original members of the Royal National Theatre alongside Laurence Olivier. His family say he was a beloved husband and father. Now, lastly, a 16-year-old boy has been arrested after one of the most photographed trees in the country was cut down suddenly. The tree at Sycamore Gap, next to Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland, was made famous in the 1991 film Robin Hood. The National Trust says it's in shock and it's saddened to see the iconic tree cut down. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
My thanks to Polly Middlehurst, who is back in an hour's time. Tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. Let's kick off with a first look at the front pages hot off the press. We start with the independent newspaper The Eye. Private schools reveal plan to use loophole to avoid Labour VAT charge. Private school head teachers urge parents to pay their fees years in advance to escape a VAT charge in the first year of a Labour government. I personally think that taxing any academic institution which teaches British children is a crime. But it's all about opinions. What's yours? Mark at gbnews.com. Next up, where shall we go next? Let's go to The Independent now. Get back on track, Mr. Sunak is the headline, as the PM refuses 12 times to rule out a plan to scrap HS2's northern leg, first revealed by The Independent. An exasperated rallying call from Britain's business bosses. Yes, indeed. They want the Prime Minister to stop dithering and to reveal the future of HS2 after he refused to say whether he would save the next leg. Daily Express. PM faces calls to ditch European courts. Of course, we've just discussed this with Anne Widdecombe. Rishi Sunak is under mounting pressure to warn the European Court of Human Rights that Britain will quit unless it commits to major reforms. OK, more front pages to come, but reacting to the big stories of the day, my top panel tonight, Daily Telegraph columnist, she always breaks the internet, Alison Pearson. He's a lord now. I remember when he was just a regular Mr. Conservative peer, Lord Bailey, and the brilliant author and broadcaster, originally Amy Nicole, then she found love, and now it's Nicole Turner. Listen, folks, lots of stories to get through. Hard-working Brits face a whopping annual bill of £6,000 every year until 2050. That's right, that's £6,000 on top of the cost of petrol, £6,000 on top of the cost of heating, food inflation, you name it. Where are people going to find £6,000? And that is all about meeting green targets. And this is according to a bombshell new report. A report from the free market think tank Civitas revealed the drive for net zero will cost £4.5 trillion by 2050. Despite Rishi Sunak's recent backtrack, the Climate Change Committee has estimated the price tag at £1.3 trillion, but economist Ewan Stewart, who authored the report, accused ministers of spectacularly underestimating the result. So, Sean, are we facing a cost of net zero crisis?
Look, if we're going to ask people to pursue a green agenda, the first thing that has to be done, it has to be costed properly. And if that cost is anywhere near £6,000 a year, it's not going to happen because people don't have it. It's as simple as that. Anybody watching this show now, could I add £6,000 a year to your bill?
Couldn't £600 a year would be a struggle.
It's not going to happen. But the deeper thing is, this is in the context of we are less than 1% of the world's CO2 output, but yet we are probably the top nation in the world in combating CO2. So if you are rabid for the green agenda, it's time to talk to other nations, the Indias, the Chinas, the USAs of this world, because that's where the real change is. But the deeper thing is this. We all want to save the planet. But if you keep underestimating the cost, if you keep lying to the public, you will lose them and they won't support any measures. So people who want to push the green agenda, I've always been happy to hear it, but they've got to give us some realistic figures.
Well, that's right. I mean, Alison, net zero is the brainchild of the billionaire elite, isn't it? And, you know, finger-wagging ex-politicians like Tony Blair. The conversation that hasn't been had is what net zero is going to cost my viewers and listeners. And this figure of £6,000 a year, that could be the half of it.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work on this. I've been talking to very leading engineers and so on, and they've been saying for a long time they thought it was going to be £200,000 at least per family. I mean, that's a conservative
Between
estimate.
now and 2050.
Between now and 2050. But Mark, it's the numpties that brought you HS2 with its spiralling costs. They're back, and they're going to be driving net zero. It's absolutely astonishing, these costs, and as Sean said, it's to so little effect, because even if we were to bring it about, which isn't going to be technically possible, we're still going to be making almost no impact on the atmosphere. But you're right, it is a...
How can you say that we're not going to have an impact on the atmosphere? I mean, the majority of climate scientists argue that if we get those emissions down, the temperatures will stop rising.
Because our country, if it went below the sea tomorrow, would make... China in a few weeks with a few coal-fired power stations is going to be replacing our emissions. And in fact, we are now trading basically we're buying things from abroad, £14 billion a year of gas from Norway, because we haven't until recently going to be drilling in our own North Sea. So it's all a con. And I agree with Sean. I think what we're going to see is what Rishi Sunak did last week. It was a tiny tweak to the net zero timetable, really tiny. 2030, I'm told, was always a delusional target. 2035 is probably going to be really hard to hit for electric vehicles. But what Rishi Sunak did is he opened the gate to the question of how much is this going to cost then? And that's great now, because every time one of these guys pops up, it'll be like, sounds lovely. How much is that going to cost?
Amy, net zero is a con. Direct quote there from Alison Pearson. Your reaction?
This is why you get yourself in trouble. Because let's look at the source for this story. It's a pro-fossil fuel think tank.
When you say pro-fossil fuel, how do you make that estimation?
Well, by the government...
Paid for by they receive donations from the oil industry?
Well, they're not very open about where they get their donations from. But what has been found in the past, 2013, they said something very similar. They said, oh, net zero is going to absolutely bankrupt us. It's going to stagnate our economy. It's going to ruin everyone's lives and leave us all shivering in the dark. And the government dismissed the think tank.
Well, they were right, weren't they?
As a manifesto
this year we've been shivering in the dark.
for locking an economy into excess reliance on imported gas. So they have been dismissed
Which
for quite a long time.
It is going to bankrupt the country. We are.
Did you say we are?
We import tons of gas.
So relying on fossil fuels further is a good thing.
Let's be clear.
Also,
hold on, we're having a conversation about net zero as if it's
the 6,000 figure is ridiculous.
I'll get to that. We're having a conversation about net zero as if it's the only concern the government has. There's our financial and physical well-being. That's why importing gas from elsewhere is ridiculous. We could do it cheaper to make us safer. But hold on, I want to get the figure.
Okay, I will come back to you. Make your point, Sean.
The figure's important. Even if it's only 1.3 trillion, where are we getting that money from? That's still too
But half your party, including Boris Johnson, who gave you your lordship, agrees that the economy in the long run will suffer more by not reaching net zero. It will cost more. Lord Debden, Zach Goldsmith, the Climate Committee. 76% of people who voted Conservative in the last election want to vote for net zero again.
Until they found out the cost.
The cost is not true. One cost that is true is the cost of living crisis we're currently experiencing, which is caused on reliance on external fossil fuels.
So we should produce our own.
And it's green.
It will go onto a global market and we'll buy it back.
The Climate Change Commission, this is an official government body, has said that we will be reliant on fossil fuels, some proportion of fossil fuels.
Some proportion, there's your key, a mix. That certainly doesn't include opening new oil fields.
It does.
Of course it does. If you're winning a race, you don't slow down.
Would you rather buy oil from Saudi Arabia, oil and gas, or from Vladimir Putin?
It makes no difference, Mark. It all goes onto a global market. It all goes onto a global market. We buy it back.
Not if we drill for our own oil and gas.
Yes, it
on our own
does.
shores.
No, it makes no difference.
Amy, let's be clear. You're making it sound like we dig up the oil, give it to a guy, and he sells it back to us. No, we sell it to that guy, have the money, and it's also a choice. We don't have to do that.
Wouldn't you prefer to be self-reliant and have wind power, which we have plentiful?
Yeah, but as long as I didn't have to turn off the
We don't have plenty of wind power, and we can't store it. The storage isn't available.
So let's raise up those green levies and work on that storage.
Look, let's be clear. Let's be very clear. If green power was cheaper and easier, we would be doing it. The money men don't care where they get the money from. They just want the money. So the idea that we could just turn off all of fossil fuels...
That's not the idea.
Wind power is not true.
That has never been the idea. It's so frustrating that you would say that.
If you challenge this figure...
All the parties used to agree on this. This shouldn't be a wedge issue. The fact this is a wedge issue is so depressing.
It's a wedge issue because people have woken up to it. I'm going to bet you now...
No, it's stories like this that make...
Alison, make her point.
I'm going to bet you now... Labour has said it's sticking with the 2030 electric vehicle target. Not only, once they get into power, will they have to postpone that target, they will not make it in by 2035. I will buy you a slap-up dinner at a restaurant of your choice.
Thank you.
Excellent.
If they actually manage to get us into electric vehicles, all electric vehicles by 2035. It's not happening, Mark.
Briefly, what are the political implications of Rishi Sunak's newfound common sense? Alison?
Well, his terrible poll numbers have stabilised a bit. I'm hoping he'll go a bit further. We've had this breakthrough of honesty now. I think he needs to really level with the people and say we intend to do this net zero, but it's only sensible and pragmatic. We're going to have to slow it down.
Yes, and this U-turn from Sunak is bad news for Keir Starmer.
It's laughable. He saw what happened in Ruislip. which, by the way, has never been won by Conservatives, even when Tony Blair was around. And he's gone, oh, this is what will get me some votes, and it's pathetic.
Already polling from those red wall seats in the north of England, where we have a lot of viewers and listeners, is responding positively to Rishi Sunak's U-turn, his common-sense approach to net zero.
Disagree. As I said, it's 76%.
Disagree?
It is.
It's what the voters think.
No, it's not. That's not what voters think. I think it's on 52.
Do you think voters
so it's
want
hardly a majority.
an extra cost of up to £6,000 a year?
As I've already said, that figure is bizarre, and I don't know how you got to it.
How much is it? Is it £3,000?
As we've also already said, it will cost more to not
answered
get
my question.
there. I have answered your question.
What's so reasonable about extra to saddle
deal with a
hard-working Brits?
global crisis?
Right, what's
and
the price?
stop crop failure, stop that millions of immigrants coming over.
This is the point.
Climate catastrophe. Is there a price on that?
Oh my God, you're doing sort of woke bingo now.
This is the point. This is the point. We cannot deal with a global crisis. We're less than 1% of the world's output. What we can do is reach net zero at a reasonable pace. 2030 is not it.
Well, look, this show is the home of diverse opinion. What's it yours? Mark at gbnews.com. Do let me know your thoughts. They come straight to this cheeky laptop right here. Now, coming up, is it time to name and shame MPs who cannot define a woman? And would you go and watch There you go. It's true. Guilty as charged. Also, what about this? A male Cinderella. Cinderella with balls. Trying to squeeze her hairy feet into that glass slipper. Yes, indeed, a Scottish ballet company is going to have a masculine Cinderella. Is this further proof that women are being erased? My brilliant panel will debate that shortly. But next, with a newfound commitment to those policies on net zero that we've just discussed, has Rishi Sunak finally found his inner Margaret Thatcher? Well, next up, a man who knew her well, his former top advisor. The brilliant, fantastic Niall Gardner is next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Well, I've got to say in regard to net zero, it's not zero for many of you on email, mark@gbnews.com. Hi, Mark, says James. All electric cars are impractical for cost, safety and ethical reasons. Do not buy. Wind power is intermittent and hopeless for a grid. Heat pumps can never match a gas boiler performance. Do not buy. Solar is unreliable and only good for backup and in predominantly sunny climes. Do you realise how amazingly well-informed you are? I could go on, but I've got to get to my next guest. Let me counter that by saying that the majority of climate scientists would argue that we've got to get those fossil fuel emissions down in order to regulate the planet's temperature, in order to stop the floods, to stop the forest fires. But it's all about opinions. What's yours, mark@gbnews.com. Now, it could be argued that what the Conservative Party needs to salvage election victory is the spirit of one Margaret Thatcher. Well, Rishi Sunak's wave of common sense policies in recent weeks has shown the PM has some understanding of conservatism, at least finally, after idling in Downing Street since he took over from Liz Truss. With a bonfire of net zero policies, slashing inheritance tax potentially, and some slim success at stopping the boats behind him, Rishi Sunak heads into conference next week with a bit of momentum. So has he finally found his inner Thatcher, a man who knows the Iron Lady, knew the Iron Lady so well? Of course, her former top aide, Niall Gardner. Niall, you've flown in from the United States. Great to see you. Do you identify a change not just in policy but in tone from Rishi Sunak?
Well, Mark, it's great to be here this evening. I have to say, I think that Sunak certainly is shifting gears significantly on a number of fronts. I think his movement on net zero was very welcome. Also, the speech by Suella Braverman in Washington was excellent.
Which won't have been made without his support.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it was a revolutionary speech by the Home Secretary. I think an outstandingly good speech.
You were in the States when she made it. How did it go down in the States?
Well, it was very well received by Conservatives. I think the Biden administration will have hated the speech because they're in favour of open borders. You've had 7 million illegal migrant crossings into the United States under the Biden administration, so they will not have liked...
7 million in
7
3
million,
years?
Correct, yeah.
That's truly shocking.
And,
I mean, that's a national security and economic crisis for America.
It is absolutely vast. And so the Biden administration, of course, will not like the message coming from Suella Braverman.
By the way, Biden
that's a good
says that
thing.
he fixed the problem with all of the illegals by letting them in.
Yeah,
that's his...
I mean, Joe Biden is an absolute disaster.
One way of fixing it, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a disaster for America. He's a disaster for the entire free world. And the United States, in effect, has an open border at the moment. And this is all due to the terrible policies of the Biden administration.
So Braverman pushed back on that approach. Do you think that she'll be heard beyond these shores, you know, her UK audience, her Conservative supporters in America? Because this is a European-wide problem, isn't it? I mean, across Europe, there are parties of the right that are rising because the public have had enough.
Yes. Yeah, I think her message resonates on both sides of the Atlantic. It resonates across much of Europe as well. And I think what she's saying is common sense. Multiculturalism has been a huge failure. Mass illegal migration poses a fundamental threat to the future of the West. And so her message was spot on. My former boss, Lady Thatcher, would have heartily agreed with what the Home Secretary was saying. In my view, however, I do think the Home Secretary could have gone further by declaring that the UK would leave the European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR. I do think the ECHR is absolutely appalling in terms of British interests, and Britain should leave it. If it wants to secure its borders, it has to be outside of the ECHR.
Do you think that's coming? Is that the mic drop moment that Rishi Sunak is waiting for in the months ahead?
That's a great question. So there is a real divide within Cabinet. There are several ministers who are very much in favour of leaving the ECHR. There are others who oppose that. I think the Prime Minister is sort of sitting on the fence at the moment. But if he decided that the UK should get out of the ECHR, that would be a huge step in the right direction. The British people would be able to secure their own borders. They cannot do that at the moment while being subject to the rule of European courts.
What has precipitated this change in approach from Rishi Sunak? Why has he become a more Thatcherite figure in recent weeks?
Well, without a doubt...
Does he believe these things, or is it expediency?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think without a doubt, Rishi Sunak is no Margaret Thatcher, but he is clearly learning from the success of Margaret Thatcher, and he is shifting rightwards, because that's where the beating heart of the Conservative Party is. Sunak cannot win the election unless he appeals to the grassroots of the Conservative Party. And Conservative Party grassroots want to see a British government that stands for secure borders, that stands for economic freedom. They also want to see, I think, a government that rejects the disastrous net zero ideology, because that's going to bankrupt Britain. Net zero is something that Lady Thatcher would have fundamentally opposed. She would have viewed it as big government socialist intervention in the free market.
Plus, she was a scientist, so she would have questioned some of the narrative around that.
Yeah, she was very much against all this climate alarmism at the moment. And I would say that Lady Thatcher would have fundamentally fought against net zero, and she would have viewed it as socialist-style big government intervention.
What would she have made of woke?
She would have been fundamentally opposed to wokeism.
We had
in
a
every
bit of
form.
it in the 80s, didn't we, with stifling political correctness?
Yeah.
But this is on another level, and it's
Yes.
infiltrating our institutions.
Yeah, wokeism is fundamentally dangerous to Great Britain, to the United States, to the entire Western world. And Margaret Thatcher would have fought wokeism with every ounce of her energy, and she would have defeated it. And wokeism really is far-left, Marxist-driven ideology. It is hugely destructive.
Open borders, racial division.
Yes.
And, of course, insane science around gender.
Yeah, exactly. The whole transgender agenda is part of that. And Margaret Thatcher would have fought it, and she would have defeated it. This is what the Conservative government has to do right now. It's in charge. It has to lead in fighting against the far-left cultural agenda. This is hugely important for the British people, and a Conservative government has to fight and prevail and win on this.
But briefly, has the country shifted to the left? Is the Thatcherite message less resonant now in 2023?
I don't think so. I think at heart, Britain remains a conservative place, and just as the United States is also a conservative nation. And so the British people are instinctively conservative. And I think that the lessons of Thatcherism apply today, and we need to see the Prime Minister advancing the legacy and the principles of Margaret Thatcher. If he wants to win the election, that's the way to do it.
You're off to conference next week. Do you enjoy conference?
I can't say I enjoy it.
I mean,
but,
you obviously speak and you attend a lot of events. And do you indulge in the après-ski as well?
I mean, I think
is that part of the experience?
Conference is an extraordinary...
Dancing with Michael Gove?
It's an extraordinary series of days, but I think this conference is important.
Yeah.
Because, let's face it, the future of the British people, the future of Brexit is also at stake, actually, with the outcome of the next election.
Yeah, well, look, Niall, great to have you in the studio. Enjoy conference if you can, with Michael Gove and others. My thanks to Niall Gardner, former top aide to Margaret Thatcher, director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom. Coming up in Uncancelled, after a new ruling from bosses on impartiality, giving high-profile presenters like Gary Lineker the freedom to say whatever they like on social media. Does anyone believe that the BBC is now politically neutral? I'll be asking the fearless Kelvin Mackenzie. Plus, I'll be asking Kelvin what he thinks about the likes of Adam Bolton ex-Sky News, who wants to close down this channel. Plus, we'll get his reaction to the other big stories of the day. But next up in the media buzz, is it time to name and shame MPs who want to quite simply define what biology is? My panel debate whether politicians who can't define what a woman is should be listed on a public register for voters to see. Do we have a right to know whether MPs know what a woman is? That's next.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our media buzz. More front pages have been delivered. Let's have a look. Daily Telegraph, it's just such an awful, horrific story. Devastated family's pain. Our lovely girl went to school and never came home. The devastated family of Eliane Andem tonight paid an emotional tribute at the spot where she was stabbed to death. Relatives described the 15-year-old aspiring lawyer as the light of our lives, whilst an aunt said that she went to school and didn't come home. Quite the most devastating sentence. A really beautiful girl and a tragic loss, and a reminder of just how, frankly, lawless this country and our great cities are becoming. Also, the great Gambon star Sir Michael dies at 82. He'll be coming up later in the show. Truly legendary actor. OK, let's go now to The Guardian. Sunak puts car drivers first in new election battle line. Rishi Sunak is to prioritise the interests of millions of car owners with a series of measures that will provoke environmentalists and curb the power of local councils, but probably win him a few more votes. Industry ties of scientists who backed processed food revealed. There's a surprise. It's like stealing joy. A 16-year-old boy has been arrested after a 300-year-old tree that stood in Sycamore Gap on Hadrian's Wall, Northumberland, was felled with a chainsaw. The Sun, a schoolgirl stabbing light of our lives. And the Telegraph, Sunak to block new 20-mile-an-hour zones. Families face biggest rise in tax burden since records began. And girls killing, call for Mayor Khan to focus on crime, not you, Les. I echo that sentiment. Right, let me get my bins on and let's introduce my fantastic pundits tonight. Yes, indeed, Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer Lord Bailey and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Now, MPs who can't work out what a biological woman is will soon have nowhere to hide, with a campaign group preparing to publicly name and shame politicians who claim that women can have a penis. The group plan on asking all MPs a simple question, what is a woman, and then uploading their responses online. So this lot might want to rethink their original answers.
Woman can have a penis.
Nick, I'm not... I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know...
Sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No, it's just... I just...
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Look, is it transphobic? Look, I don't even know how to start answering these questions.
What really bothers me, Alison Pearson, is when politicians who are supposed to be clever people say it's a very difficult question to answer. No, it ain't.
It certainly isn't. Imagine saying to our grandparents, Mark, that a politician was going to be asked, can a woman have a penis? It's totally mental. But there is this very good new campaign, Stand Up for Women UK, if anyone wants to find them on social media. And the great Sharon Davis, who's been such a warrior for women, absolutely.
And paid the price.
And paid the price. But Sharon Davis, viewers will remember this, a wonderful Olympian swimmer, denied her gold medal because East German female athletes took so much testosterone that they were growing beards and they beat her. They denied Sharon her gold and now she's having her revenge. So this very simple campaign, Mark, I'm fully behind it. Let all the MPs, they can state, can a woman have a penis? They can answer it, the answer will be logged, and constituents, voters, can look at the answers and decide, is this someone I want in charge of my child's education? Because I hear all the time from parents and grandparents saying we feel totally helpless about what our children are being exposed to in school, and this is the start of the fight back. We are not going to let these people impose these delusional ideas on our children.
Well, Amy, this from Andrea on email, mark@gbnews.com. Of course, we've got a right to know. Why would you vote for someone that is deluded? If they're deluded about biological facts, what else are they deluded about?
I think you're intentionally merging biology with gender. I think it's really dehumanising. I think it's embarrassing. I think this whole list is pathetic, and I don't see any. I see the only shamefulness for me would be not to be on the list.
What would you answer if asked what is a woman?
The law, whatever.
Why do you have to fall back on the law? Why don't you look in the mirror?
You think if a trans woman looks in the mirror? I don't understand what you're trying to...
Well, you're an adult female human.
So you're going to presume...
You are a woman.
You're going to presume my genitalia? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm going to presume that you're a biological female.
OK,
yeah, first of all, you've mothered a child.
Right.
So, and then you
am I reduced to that then? So to be a woman, you have to be able to bear children?
You're only reduced in a sense that a doctor, when you come out of your mother's womb, the doctor declares your sex at that point. You're not reduced to anything.
Plenty of women don't have a womb. Are they not women?
They're still biological women.
I think if you reduce someone to a sum of their body parts, it's really sad.
Let me briefly interrupt you. Every cell in their body contains DNA that confirms them as females.
So you checked yours.
Well, are you questioning the science now?
Well, I don't think your biology is how we live. I think your gender is how...
Your biology is a fact.
So? So what? If a woman says she's a woman and that's how she lives her life, why would you not respect that?
Because we know from recent experience that men claiming to be women are now applying after being rapists to go into female jails. So whether a woman has a penis or not is not a frivolous question. It's extremely serious for our spaces, for female wards in hospitals, for female prisons. These people are dangerous. And we are not, by the way, talking about genuine trans women who have fully transitioned. We are talking about blokes who wear a dress like the dreadful Isla Robson person in Scotland, who put on a pair of pink leggings and a blonde wig and declared that he was a female.
And we agreed
and that
at the
brought down
time.
Nicola Sturgeon because Scottish people thought it was appalling and ridiculous, which it was.
How do you feel about... Because I look at Sean and he's muscular and very handsome, very intellectual, very masculine.
Are you a woman?
How do you feel about Sean identifying as female and participating in, I don't know, women's football at the weekend?
That's not happening. What is
exactly
that hypothetical question?
Well, said football club would be called transphobic if they rejected his advances.
Sean isn't trans. Sean identifies as a man.
Here's for me why it's important. The public should know what MPs who are making the rules that their children have to live by think. So I think that the campaign is entirely decent because it's been done the other way around. Trans activists have made sure that MPs are asked the question, do they believe in trans rights, etc., etc., etc. So it's just a balancing of the campaign. And why it's important, what brought me to this was actually Sharon Davies when she talked about sports. I've been involved in sports all my life. I've coached several different things. And you ask anybody who teaches young girls any kind of sport, it's really hard to get teenage girls involved in sport. And then you have men and boys teleporting themselves into their world and taking away their space.
Do you know how hard it is
for trans... sometimes fully intact... In the changing rooms.
Here's my thing. They're always intact because it doesn't matter how many hormones you take. You've already had the benefit of dense bones, bigger lungs, you're 6'4", as opposed to someone who...
Don't rub in. I still go to the gym. Amy, what do you think, though? OK, so listen, I appreciate what you're going to say and you speak for many in what you've said. OK, no problem. But what do you think about this list? Is the list a good thing? Do voters have a right to know either way what your definition of biology is?
The list is absurd. Why don't you do a list of the MPs involved in sexual misconduct, ongoing investigations, a list about donors, a list about money wasted, a list about the things that actually matter?
I need to take you up because it's not this list or that list. We can have many lists. And the important thing about this list as well, it's about doublespeak. You've had so many MPs on one hand who've said, I'm a feminist, I'm for the safety of women, we don't want to raise women, we want to keep women in safe spaces. But on the other hand, they said women can have penises. It's one or the other.
OK.
You've got to pick a team.
That's so ignorant.
Final point. At this week's Liberal Democrats conference, they decided that the menopause wasn't solely a female preserve. Well, as someone who's been through the menopause and suffered with it, as millions of other women have, I find this absolute appropriation of female experience.
Yes.
So would you say a trans man doesn't go through menopause, necessarily?
Yes.
A trans woman claiming to be a woman...
No, a trans man. That would be affecting trans men, wouldn't it?
A trans man does go through menopause, yes.
Presumably.
Yes, but that's because of
a trans man
female.
is a biological figure.
So menopause isn't a solely female experience. There is a minority of people that will experience menopause as well.
They're not a man, they're a woman. If you're going through the menopause, you can only go through the menopause if you've got ovaries and a lot of oestrogen.
Yes.
I think this conversation takes up way too much time.
There you go. OK, folks. Well, listen, I've had my fill of oestrogen for one evening. Shortly, my brilliant panellists will be nominating their, of course, they're going to heroes and villains of the day. Looking forward to that. But coming up in Uncancelled, after a new ruling from bosses on Impartiality gives high-profile presenters like Gary Lineker the freedom to say what they like on social media, does anyone actually believe that the BBC is politically neutral? Fleet 3 legend Kelvin MacKenzie is live on that next, plus his reaction to Newsnight leading the authoritarian calls for GB News to be shut down. Kelvin reacts next.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It is time for Uncancelled. And a new report triggered by Gary Lineker's controversial political tweets has concluded that high-profile BBC presenters, including Saint Gary Lineker, should be able to express their views on political issues as long as they stop short of campaigning. Whilst newsreaders will still be bound by the Beeb's strict impartiality guidelines, presenters of flagship shows, including Match of the Day, The Apprentice and MasterChef, will be free to spout their personal politics to the licence fee-paying public. Unsurprisingly, Match of the Day host Lineker seems delighted with the new rules, branding them as very sensible. Well, I'm delighted to welcome the eminently sensible former editor of The Sun newspaper when it sold millions of copies, Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, have the Beeb got their house in order here?
Well, I mean, what we're going to be spared now is Mr. Lineker spilling out his views every 5 minutes or so. He's not allowed to speak at any time, 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after, any time that he's on Match of the Day. So that's a good thing. What is a strange thing is that this only comes out because the reality is that it's only from the centre-left who have a problem. If you are of the right and you said anything at all, you would be fired by the BBC. So really this is indulging the kind of the liberal side of the BBC. So actually, honestly, they've made some efforts to curtail him, but the truth about the matter is that only the left have anything to say, and they're going to be allowed to say it.
Yes, does it also give us a flavour of just how powerful a figure Lineker is within the BBC?
It's a very odd thing, isn't it? Why does anybody care about effectively a gold show going out on a Saturday night? Why do they pay him 1.2 million a year?
1.6.
Honestly, it is an astonishing amount of money for literally nipping up to Salford, probably for about 8 hours and coming back again and saying that was a good goal, that was a bad goal. An astonishing amount of money. But I think we're coming to the end of the Lineker era. My bet is that his contract will not be renewed on both sides in a couple of years' time when it runs out.
Well, speaking about the review and the resulting guidelines, Kelvin, the BBC Director General Tim Davie has said we all have a responsibility to treat people with civility and respect, particularly at a time when public debate and discussion, both on and offline, can be so polarised. The BBC has also important commitments to both freedom of expression and impartiality, and this rightly extends to social media. So he would argue, and his supporters would argue, that actually he's sorted out the loophole and hopefully put this drama behind him. Can we talk about another drama, Kelvin, and last night's Newsnight, in which the three guests on the show called for GB News to be closed down? Your reaction?
Well, let me first make my first position clear that Lawrence Fox, that was a disgrace, and he went far too far. OK, so that's position one. Position two, in relation to the BBC's Newsnight, is that they had three people on there. David Gellan, the former editor of the Sun, he said it should be shut down. They had Adam Bolton, a kind of political commentator, he used to work for Sky News. He said shut it down. And they had a lady called Note, who is an equality leader for the Tories, really, and she said shut it down. Where was the balance of that? Look, we pay £159 a year, right? And actually all voices need to be recognised. The only one they wanted to hear was actually get rid of the station, right? And honestly, GB News must be feeling very, very uneasy right now about what the future looks like. It's a very, very dangerous moment, I think, for everybody and all the employees, caused by Lawrence Fox, by the way. So don't let's say it's caused by anybody else. So all I would say is that Newsnight, what they say is, well, we asked GB News to come on. Hold on a second. We knew what GB News' reaction was. They got rid of Lawrence Fox, and they dumped the presenter as well. They couldn't have acted more quickly. It wasn't a management issue. This was an individual issue. And the BBC, honestly, we pour a bucket on the BBC. The BBC were giving an opportunity by GB News to have a bucket poured on them. And so, they were basically getting even.
Now, of course, Kelvin, we can't get into the detail of Lawrence Fox because an ongoing investigation is in place. You'll fully understand that. Do you think GB News will be here in a couple of years' time?
I'm not sure.
A candid answer from a candid journalist and broadcaster. Why do you say that, Kelvin?
Well, there's been an advertising boycott. No TV station can survive without advertising. And the media and the kind of the young kids in the media and everything have all boycotted it. So there isn't enough advertising to pay everybody's wages, including yours, Mark, unfortunately.
Oh, listen, you've got no idea how cheap I am. Kelvin, listen, a straight answer, a straight question. Can't wait to see you in a week's time. Absolute media legend, Kelvin Mackenzie. Thank you, Kelvin. OK, it's time now for my pundits to reveal their greatest Britain and Union jackass. Alison, your greatest Britain, a truly great actor.
Yes, so Michael Gambon, one of the titans of British acting, who has sadly died. Best known, of course, for his magnificent performance as Dumbledore in Harry Potter. But he was there at the start of the National Theatre with Sir Laurence Olivier, gave some astonishingly subtle and beautiful performances. One of the greatest performances ever on British television, Mark, in The Singing Detective. Let's re-release it to show what an absolute genius Michael Gambon was.
Completely. I saw him in a pub in Kensington one afternoon, just nursing a pint. What a legend. Michael Gambon, your hero of the day. There we are. Sean, next up, who's it going to be?
Mine is the Rosebank oil and gas field, newly opened. The jobs, the investment and the increased energy security. What a great thing for the country as we slowly move towards net zero.
Energy security is national security. Amy, a couple of seconds, if you would.
Scottish Ballet for reimagining Cinderella. So some nights when the audience goes, it's a prince, and the other nights it's a princess doing the
That's right.
up of
you get a free lunchbox. OK, and how about your jackass, Alison?
If it was a male Cinderella, he wouldn't do the sweeping, would he, Amy? My jackass is Adam Bolton, former news titan of, who thinks GB News should be shut down because to preserve the ecology of channels like his own. It's called competition, Adam.
OK, briefly, Sean?
Dame Diana Johnson, Labour MP, wants to have shoot-up rooms all over the country. Drugs destroy communities. She should know better.
OK, and last but not least, how about you, Amy?
I've gone for Peter Bone, MP, who this morning claimed that Margaret Thatcher, in fact, closed the coal mines because she is an environmentalist.
OK, listen, thank you for your company. I'm back tomorrow for Mark Dolan tonight. I've got Saturday, Sunday, Monday and Tuesday. Love your company. Thanks for it. Headliners is next.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Most of us will get wet overnight, some heavy downpours moving from west to east. Some gusty winds also picking up for a time, all thanks to this little area of low pressure. Could provide some very heavy rain over parts of South Wales in particular, so we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place here, but also parts of the Midlands and extending up towards Lincolnshire and across to Cambridgeshire and Norfolk in line for some quite heavy downpours, especially through the early hours. Further north and west, it will turn a little drier, with the exception being northwest Scotland, where it'll stay blustery with further showers. Our skies clear, temperatures may dip to single figures, but most towns and cities will stay in double digits. Friday is by and large a fine day, but early on there will be some rain still over East Anglia and the southeast of England. Should scoot away fairly smartly. Plenty of showers packing in over the Highlands, the Western Isles and the Northern Isles, where it'll stay blustery. One or two showers will feed in on the breeze elsewhere, but for most it's a bright and breezy Friday. Good spells of sunshine, and in the south that'll feel quite pleasant with temperatures up to 21 Celsius, mostly 16 to 18 elsewhere. Saturday starts a bit chilly, but mostly starts fine and bright, and many central and eastern parts will stay that way. However, out west, cloud and rain will start to move into Northern Ireland, parts of North and West Wales, and then into northwest England and southwest Scotland. As well as turning wet here, it will once more turn very gusty. Again, temperatures for most in the mid to high teens, but 20 Celsius in the sunny spells in the southeast.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a